Kick-off today was, as I said, to introduce you to a couple of very successful businesses. First up, I would like to welcome to the microphone, I was going to say to the stage, but we don't actually have a stage, we're on the floor. I'd like to introduce Corey Bell from Next Level Racing. Corey's the head of commercial and corporate strategy. He's played and worked as an administrator in many areas of sport over the past 25 years. Actually began his career as an AFL player for the Brisbane Lions, in brackets Brisbane Bears, which just gives you a bit of an indication of his age without giving away too much. He's completed a double degree in sports science and sports management. He went on to be a senior manager for the AFL and also the Gold Coast Suns before being appointed the CEO of Queensland Touch Football. He then went on to lead the City of Gold Coast in sport in 2019 for the Sports Accord and also for both the 2018 Gold Coast and 2022 Birmingham Commonwealth Game trade programs. Corey's now, as I said, the head of commercial and corporate strategy for Next Level Racing, who are global leaders in racing and flight simulation in 54 countries across the world. Would you please welcome Corey? Our other panellist is Braden Goodwin from Populous. Braden's an associate principal and APAC lead for high-performance training facilities at Populous. He's an expert in the design and delivery of stadiums, elite sporting and broadcast facilities. He's worked on a number of projects across Australia and Asia Pacific. Throughout his career, Braden's worked on every aspect of design process, from the initial front-end design to 3D BIM documentation, fabrication and on-site construction. His recent work includes the Brisbane Lions, a bit of a common theme here, the AFL, elite training facility, the Brighton Homes Arena project, UTAS Stadium, Whitten Oval for the Western Bulldogs, GMHBA Stadium for the Geelong Cats, and is also directing the design team for the Fortress esports venues in Melbourne and Sydney, the largest video gaming and esports complex in the Southern Hemisphere. Would you please welcome Braden? As a side note, in the discussions that we had prior to today, we also worked out that both of these businesses have been Queensland Exporters of the Year over the past few years. So they do have something in common, but as they both indicated to me, they haven't even started yet. So it's going to be interesting to have a chat to them both. First of all, guys, I guess a bit of an elevator pitch from you both as to what your businesses do and I guess your role with them.
Is it on? Yeah. Hi, my name's Braden, based in the Brisbane office, but definitely work all over Australia and obviously pushing into Asia Pacific. Populous is a design architectural business based in Brisbane, which has complete global connections. We have offices in London and also in Kansas City. I guess our tagline is we design places that people love to be together, or drawing people together. And yeah, basically we've designed stadiums from Yankee Stadium, Wembley, MCG, and more locally Suncorp Stadium. We've obviously got quite a big portfolio in terms of arena work as well, so we have a really good understanding in terms of fan engagement and how that needs to come to be, and how to design stadiums that can get people closest to the action and provide them with an ultimate experience. We have an aviation business. We also get into coax, but basically anything which is do large public assembly buildings, moving lots of people. We're now sort of starting to translate a lot of that from the work that we do in stadium design and then into those sort of market sectors. More close to home, probably closer to the work that I do, is high performance design. So we've worked with a number of high performance training clubs across the country, mainly AFL and NRL, but we're also starting to work with Olympic sports as well and individual sports, the likes as well. So yeah, that's the work that I do and the work that Populous does.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, Jace, thank you so much. And before I get started, I just want to say on behalf of Hess and Tony, who many know in the room, it's a real privilege to sit up here today as one of the two businesses sort of being showcased, if you like. And you know, on behalf of Next Level Racing, for those that don't know of Next Level Racing, we're the global drive or racing and flight simulation leaders in the world. We're based in 54 countries, and we're established in 2009. And I suppose in that time, over that 13 years, have really developed a product that both the consumer and the commercial market can bring into play. In the last 6 or 12 months, we've seen a real appetite for both sports, traditional sports, and commercial sectors looking to grow in that simulation space. So more recently, we've just been to the Avalon Air Show to I suppose push out our flight range, which we launched in August last year for the first time off the back of the drive. And then a few weeks after that, we've been living out of a bag, Jace, for that time. Basically, we went down to engage our partnership with Ferrari through the F1. What's really exciting about Next Level Racing is, the team I'm fortunate to work with really focus on innovation around SportTech and innovation in commercial and consumer outcomes. And I don't think we're there yet. I think, as we said when we caught up through the week, and Hess and Tony would totally agree with this, that we're really just getting going, and certainly really excited to be part of a company that's based in Queensland and on the Gold Coast that is leading worldwide sport tech.
Cool. I wish I had the frequent flyer points of these two sort of put together. It'd be nice. But I guess, as we discussed on our hookup, it's fair to say that you guys have achieved, your businesses have achieved a lot. But as we sit here today, post-COVID, we sort of got through what we needed to get through there. But what are the biggest challenges, or what's the biggest challenge for your businesses as we sit here today?
I guess I'm going to have to be an architect and say something really boring, but cost has probably been, off the back of that, the biggest challenge that we've had in terms of labour and material shortages. So, we've had to really kind of rethink about what that looks like moving forward, and had to come up with new strategies, and we've actually engaged a bit more globally amongst other sort of organisations to work out the best way moving forward on that particular piece. In terms of, I think, if I take a lens back to tech and the digital sort of environment, I think the biggest challenge that we've got with a number of things that we're kind of to do, and look, I'm an architect, I am not a legal profession, do not take my legal advice. But I think it's going to be the IP discussion around how we're going to be able to utilise a number of these digital platforms, metaverses, AI, track, all that sort of stuff. I think that's going to be one of the sort of bigger challenges that we're going to be faced with, and I think it's going to be this group here and a slightly broader group that's going to kind of have to work out how can we make sure that we're all not just taking a big leap of faith and saying it's all going to be okay. How can we make it in a way that we provide something that we can all jump together and make sure that we're all going to kind of land safely, or as safe as we possibly can.
That's why we invited you, John Mullins, so come up with a solution there. What about you, Corey?
I think for us, Jason, as I touched on earlier, we're in 54 countries, so that global sort of challenge that we face in all of the markets is a real challenge for us, being up front. We've got a consumer piece to our business that we're probably, if we're really honest, a nice to have as opposed to an absolute necessity. So certainly the last few months, if not last 6 to 12 months, has been challenging for us. But as a business, I think the key piece is to look for the opportunities that come out of that, and that might be around more commercial, as I touched on. The other challenge, I think, which is a good challenge, but it's certainly a challenge, is how quick technology is moving. And I only learned about Moore's Law when I started with Next Level Racing, because I'm surrounded by some amazing young females and males in the sport tech space. But Moore's Law, for those that don't know what that is, as I didn't, was that every 2 years technology pretty much doubles on itself. And I think keeping up with that in itself is a real challenge, because if you think you've made it, or you think you've got the secret formula or equation, before you know it, whether it's a competitor or someone in a startup, they've moved forward. So I think they're the two challenges, certainly within our organisation, that we've constantly got our eye on.
Do you mind if I just jump on the back of that as well? I mean, we design things that are very permanent. So to be able to design a stadium or an arena that is going to be able to deal with more theory in terms of doubling and changing of digital and what's popular as well, generationally we're seeing changes in terms of what people are finding fashionable as well. We have to build in that sort of level of flexibility in terms of that when we're designing these very sort of permanent structures.
Sure. I guess everyone in this room is very conscious of the fact that there's this event coming to town in 9 years or whatever it might be. I guess
coming quickly, I think.
Yeah,
Jase,
coming probably too quickly. But I guess we've got time on our side as we sit here today, which is going to go very quickly. But with that in mind, where do you see the big opportunities, like for everybody, not only your own business, but including that? But where are the big opportunities moving forward?
I guess with the role that I've got, we take the sort of stadium lens. It's going to be the fan experience lens. It's going to be an extremely big space that I think is going to evolve quite huge. I think, how we're going to sort of approach that from the different price points and the different adventures and different sort of experiences we're going to have in terms of our live experiences. I think that's going to be a huge growth market. And then I think the other one, if we flip it in terms of the elite training, high performance and that sort of stuff is how can we use technology as a recruiting tool? And how can we use high performance from an actual use tool in terms of analytics and data, and because it's basically getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and everyone's got a more powerful computer sitting in their hand at the moment. So to use the example of GPS, 10 years ago was something you had to wear on a back, and it might have cost $30,000, and elite teams may have only had two. Now everyone's got one; they wear it on their wrist. So things are really kind of evolving at a rate of knots. So that would be my two opportunities.
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity that I see holistically, and I try to look at it as everyone's eyes looking this way for my answer, is, and something I'm passionate about, the support of governments and the support of stakeholder groups is the opportunity for everyone in this room. And I say that, congratulations Nicole Kelly, State Government, and the work you guys do with SportX. That's your opportunity. The federal government, your local councils, I think Wendy was mentioned, and others that are here. That's your opportunity, and a lot know my previous history of how passionate I am about that with the sessions like today, the government support, the B2B opportunities, the chance just to get, if you spend a good 2 or 3 hours tonight, you can go away with a lot of knowledge you can impart in your business. You can't do that at your desk or in a one-on-one in a coffee shop. So I think the opportunity is over this next 9 years, and more so now because those supporting authority groups have really realised, let's get cracking and let's run events like this, etc. That to me is a real opportunity for businesses in a real holistic sense, and I'd encourage you to maximise that and get to as many of these things as you can. I think Nicole's rattled off half a dozen things I've already got. Yep, we've got to go to that, we've got to apply for that, we've got to do that. So that's the huge opportunity I think that sits in front of us, Jason, leading into the games.
For sure. I guess just leading on from that question, as far as we're all here for SportsTech specifically, I guess just getting your thoughts around what is the next big thing, like purely from a SportsTech perspective, what do you see as being, looking forward, over the next decade or so, what's going to be the next big thing?
Yeah, still in on my field of expertise, but what we are seeing is that there's going to be a convergence with a number of different technologies coming together and a platform that can kind of carry them all. So if you think about blockchain and AI and tracking and those sorts of technologies, I think we're going to see that kind of come together in a sort of far more holistic sort of manner, which will be really, really fantastic. And I think there'll be a lot of data that operators and the likes are going to be able to use for marketing purposes, but also for security. The government will be able to use that information as well, but it'll also be able to provide that touchless service perspective, so you can enter a stadium, literally, obviously we're scanning phones and the likes, but service to chairs. I'd probably be a little bit worried if we could, the AI would predict what you want for food. I think that might be a step too far from me. It might be a little bit too scary, but I think that's going to be really interesting how that all kind of comes together. And from our perspective, we're really kind of excited about what that could potentially look like.
I couldn't keep it to one, Jace, so I'll quickly rattle off three. The first one is around skill set. So as much as AI is creeping in, and I think in the last 24 hours, AI sent something out, or so my kids tell me, on behalf of itself. There's always going to still need to be that human skill set, and I think there's an opportunity in the SportTech world. We look at the ASTN, SportX, the guys that run the SportTech World Series. There's a lot of skilled professionals in SportTech that if you can work on that skill set, that's the opportunity, and I work with about 40 of them. I am the least smartest person in the room by 100 miles, but I've probably learnt more in the last 5 or 6 months being at next level than I could. The second one is definitely around immersion. For us, we've just launched our HF8 haptic pad, which is the world first, something that the company's really proud of, and I think everyone Goldie and Queensland are proud of, where we've been able to do that from Queensland, from the Gold Coast. It's a 8-motor basic pad that sits in your seat that vibrates if you crash into a wall like I usually do on the Sims, or if a jet flies over, you can feel a vibration through that. It works not only in our simulators, but with music, and it works with movies, etc. So what we're seeing is that the physical reality tied into sort of the technical immersion piece, and we're seeing that come together ever so quickly. The third one, without a doubt, is around talent ID. So I'll go back to my roots of traditional sport. I think the opportunity really sits there, that if you can talent ID in the next it'll be in the next couple of years, Nicole, because we know the runway starts in the next couple, not at the end of the 9 years. If you can get in and have your SportTech wrapped around talent ID, you're going to be going all right.
All right, we've got one more question, and then I'm going to get a question or two from the floor. But as I said, we've got a lot of varying and diverse range of businesses here in the room today. But if there is one piece of advice that you could give to everyone in the room, what would it be?
I think never stop innovating. And I know I'm going to use two, but never stop innovating. We can always constantly innovate. We can always grow. We can always improve. And we're constantly doing that. We're constantly recalibrating, reviewing, and trying to sort of get excellence. We'll never achieve it, but we'll definitely strive for it. I think the other part to that is that, any idea can come from anywhere. And that, we really, from the top down, bottom up approach that we do at Populous is that, we do design crit sessions where, we've got the intern who's involved with the managing director, and we're having those types of conversations. And it's about allowing that sort of free conversation, because, a lot of the sort of more senior people in the actual organisation can identify these amazing ideas as well. So that'd be my recommendation.
I ran this concept past our illustrious CEO, and he looked at me and stared at me very hard, and he said 2 words, and they were, be humble. And that's what our whole business is built on. There's a lot to unpack in that, which I won't, Jace. I won't bore you with that. But the be humble piece is around giving more than you expect to get back, working extra hours than you would. Can you assist another business? Can you be the person that other people aspire to? And I think the be humble piece is certainly the bit of advice that has had, and that I certainly aspire to, and love being part of that journey with Next Level as well.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's a great lesson for everyone. As I said, I've got time for 1 or 2 max questions. Anyone in the room with a question for either of the panellists?
Corey, you talked about talent ID. Do you see that will mean that now kids in remote areas will actually get chances that perhaps they don't get now, by having that opportunity in front of them? And also, do you think that it could possibly take some of the politics out of the selection process within sport?
Yeah, great question. And again, this is my opinion from 30 years of mainstream sport and 5 minutes in a bit of a sport tech world, but I'll touch on that as well. In terms of the talent ID, yeah, I think it will. Technology will really assist the testing. I think the great work that the guys did the last 12 months for Youth for 32 was a great example of that, being able to have that talent ID. From a sport tech point of view, I'll give you an example I've come across in the last few months. We're working with a school in Brisbane who are looking at our product. They said, we're getting some of the girls that have come to this particular said school that are coming and driving the simulators because they've learned how to drive on their farms way up north, and they're actually really talented. We get them on the sims and they're actually beating the adults, the young males, etc., etc. So for me, that talent ID piece sits there where imagine if we can get SportTech and simulators around the world to remote areas, you know, or internationally, we're going to draw those skills out. We had someone came in and bought a sim from us years ago, the absolute basic sim, went in this international competition, won that competition and ended up driving professionally in a real on-the-road car off the back of that. So that's Talent ID 101 for me.
I think just to add to that one as well is that simulators are a hell of a lot more cheaper than if you had to actually buy a race car. So the ability to get it out, it makes it far more approachable for more people who may not have got that opportunity otherwise but are full of talent.
One more question.
I'm quite interested. I know you're part of Fortress and the design down there. I'm in esports tech space. And I know overseas, in America particularly, a lot of the stadiums are starting to build little side hubs for, I guess, both simulators and esports. What are you seeing in that space, and what are you kind of thinking from an Australian perspective, what's happening?
Yeah, I probably should have mentioned it as a huge opportunity, I think. From what we're seeing at the moment, I probably was wearing the wrong cap. But yeah, huge opportunities, I think, in esports. I think the issues with the Australian market at the moment, it's probably not quite as progressed as Asia and Europe and the US particularly. But it's definitely going to go that way. And I think there's a lot of groundswell around that particular area. At the moment, we're probably looking at more the Fortress model where it's a bit of a hospitality / entertainment kind of model. It's probably not necessarily washing its hands at the moment. But we've also done some work with Power, Lachlan Power's group as well, and we worked on the design for their high-performance training centre in Fortnite, which was something they were hoping to be able to launch as a real live facility moving forward, which I'm sure you're probably aware of. So I think those sorts of opportunities are going to present themselves more and more moving forward, which we're extremely excited about. There's nothing, I mean, it's almost like we've got to reinvent ourselves otherwise, because if everything goes into the virtual, we're not going to be building anything physical. So yeah, it's a really exciting time as an architect.
Oh, I was actually just going to throw one to Corey.
Yep.
I'm really interested in, good question, because I was going to ask a similar one for Talent ID, where Talent ID is well in some ways, but for, I guess, more traditional games rather than simulators. How are you starting that conversation with people? We work with quite a few schools as well, but just what does that look like for you with a product that potentially is expensive to them?
Yeah. We're really fortunate, Hess, Tony Invest in our organisation. We've got a community partnerships manager within our team, and we're seeing a really big take-up of monthly community events online, which are bringing what I'd call non-traditional esport people into having a go at that. I've turned into that parent of 20 years saying to my son, get off your computer, to get on your computer, because there's huge opportunities now in it. And I think the key thing that we're seeing is the schools and, again, the non-traditional forms are starting to really come for those esport competitions, and our community managers run off his feet with all these new sparked opportunities. And I just really feel, back on Braden's point before, that we're sort of a little bit slow to get going, and then there's going to be this huge slingshot where we're going to go, oh, yep, the light bulb will go off, and then everybody's going to want to have this as part of mainstream. And it was really interesting when we were down as part of the F1, some of the people in the room, I think Ben, you were down there, and a few others that I can see. It was interesting listening to the guys at the NBL with Jeremy, the CEO, speaking about how a few years ago, sport tech and that sort of sport gaming was, oh yeah, you knew someone that did it. Now everybody's engaged in it. And I feel like there's this big wave starting to come. It might take a few more years, as you touched on, but I think it's definitely well on its way. And what's really sped that up is that the IOC running the eSport Week in June in Singapore has got everyone scrambling, because we all thought it was maybe a demo in 28 into 32, and now they've brought that forward 5 years. Everyone's going, okay, this is actually moving way quicker than we thought, which I think is a really good thing.
Yeah, because like augmented technologies and those sorts of things have been around for a while, Google Glass, all that sort of, but I think that generationally, we probably weren't quite ready to take on augmented reality. I think this new generation that's coming through who grew up with computers, who have grown up with, Fortnite and sharing, that's their social, that's their life. They're going to be very willing to actually potentially pay a premium price for unlocking something in a stadium sort of situation, which hasn't sort of necessarily worked so far. So we're also quite excited about what that could possibly look like as well.
And we talked about that this week when we met. You've sort of got that younger generation that can deal with us, and I'll put me in the bucket, older folk, more traditional, through this e-sport world, and they can live in both worlds and are very adaptable. And as I said, I work with a lot of 25-year-olds, and they are great commercially with the background I've got, but then have got this beautiful sports tech, ability to do things that are leading the world. So hats off to the next generation, I reckon.
To build on that and to the question before around talent ID and whether tech can be used better, and the answer is yes. So within Queensland Government, Queensland Academy of Sport last year for the first time did a U for 32 talent ID program that went through the state, which has been fantastic. And we're talking with them around how do you bring tech into that more so that people don't have to be there in a place on the day. There's existing tech that people could be sending in, AI could be looking at. Like there's a whole range of things that exist now that, and Queensland's a very, very dispersed geographically state, and so people shouldn't be disadvantaged based on where they live or, what their parents might have in other commitments on a day that they can't drive them somewhere. So huge opportunities there, and I think as well, just to sort of tie up the esports, as part of the strategy that we're developing, something I'm very keen, I think the conversation that's been had to date has been esports versus physical sports, and there's two camps, and it's, oh no, they'll all be on their computers and no one's out doing, and I think the huge opportunity and the maturity of how we design this strategy is it should be a convergence, and there are areas in esports that it democratises gender, it democratises able-bodied, it democratises where you live, it democratises whether your parents can afford an F1 car, and it's not one or the other. And so I think if we're clever about that and collectively use the brains in this room and broader, then we can do something that isn't really being done yet well elsewhere.
Really well said, Nicole. I think that's a real opportunity.
All right, I think you'd agree we could probably talk all night just on that topic, but would you please put your hands together and thank Corey and Braden. Thanks, guys.